but me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the LouieTeeNetwork 2024 NFL Mock Draft. The Chicago Bears are officially on the clock, and the 2024 LouieTeeNetwork Mock Draft is officially open for business. So we start with the Chicago Bears. This has been a secret that has been uncovered long ago. The minute the Bears traded Justin Fields, we already knew what they wanted to do. All they really needed to do was vet Caleb Williams, find out if he was willing to play for the Chicago Bears organization. Was there going to be any issues with that? Once they were able to kind of get to the bottom of all of that, the tape speaks for itself. They knew what they wanted to do. They moved on from Justin Fields, and that cleared the way for them to do what exactly it is they're going to do with the number one overall pick, which we've known for quite some time. With the number one overall pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Chicago Bears select quarterback Caleb Williams, USC. So we move on to the number two pick in the draft, held by the Washington Commanders. And this is one of those picks that has been long discussed. As a fellow Washington Commanders fan, we dubbed the Drake May versus Jaden Daniels war that has been going on the Civil War, as neither side could come to any kind of agreement on anything regarding this pick. They've been at odds since Washington has pretty much made it abundantly clear they weren't going to trade this pick, and that Caleb Williams was off the table when the Bears traded Justin Fields. So it really became a two-horse race. I've long said do not discount J.J. McCarthy, but it felt like a two-horse race, and that's what it's probably been for much of this draft period. Now, I will say, I don't know if it was a two-horse race with the two horses that everyone thinks, but that's nor here nor there. The bottom line is there's been a lot of scuttlebutt back and forth about what Washington was going to do at number two in terms of who they were going to select. The odds have been moving up and down, especially over the last week. At the end of the day, we see this happen all the time. Last year was Will Levis. The odds shot up right before the draft. People actually had these visions of Will Levis hearing his name called number one overall or number two overall, and he ended up going in the second round. This isn't that, okay? Those quarterbacks that don't hear their name called here at number two aren't going to fall that far down the board, but it's the same premise. It was always C.J. Stroud last year with the Houston Texans, and it's always been this quarterback here for the Commanders at two. With the second pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Washington Commanders select quarterback Jaden Daniels, LSU. So now you get to where I think the draft becomes interesting. Now we start to have some real dialogue about what's going to happen. I think the first two picks kind of felt like a formality. There could be a curveball come draft night, day one, with the Washington Commanders. Highly unlikely at this point. I think this is where the real action begins in this draft. Will the Patriots trade out of three? Will the Patriots select a player of their own, a quarterback, most likely if they stay at three? Or will they move back, pick up picks, and go about it in a different manner? I think the prevailing thought is the Patriots are going to stay at three. Now the question becomes, well, who are you going to spend the third overall pick on? We've heard a lot of things, and these rumors that are surfacing prior to the draft are from trusted sources, people that have been known to be deep in league circles and don't usually miss when they take a shot. Diana Russini reported that Jonathan Kraft has been very, very active in these first round discussions. Now, we know Elliot Wolf has taken over as the new general manager, and he's supposed to be putting his thumbprint on this Patriots organization and doing things his way. Wouldn't it be ironic that now that Belichick is gone and the Patriots can now exhale the Krafts, who have been known to allow their general managers and their football people to do their jobs, wouldn't it be ironic if now that they moved on from Belichick, they feel like, hey, let's spread our wings and have a little bit of fun? I could see Jonathan Kraft saying, hey, I want to be involved in this process And if this is in fact true, if what Diana Rossini says is true, which I believe her, that Jonathan Kraft has been very involved in this process, when non-football people get involved in football decisions, things usually go awry because then feelings get involved and things that have nothing to do with the actual tape watching and the vetting of the players gets kind of pushed aside and red flags get missed and you go off of too much emotion. I could see there being an attachment to J.J. McCarthy and the Michigan pedigree and having an endorsement from Tom Brady and them feeling like, hey, we need a winner. One of the things I remember very vividly last year was Robert Kraft was not happy, and he wasn't happy because they weren't winning. And he was miserable. You know, losses against teams like the Colts over in Germany. I believe it was in Germany. It might have been in the UK, but whatever it was, he was hot after that game. So hot, I thought Belichick might get fired on the spot. You draft Drake May, and you're not going to win right away. You draft J.J. McCarthy, and there's a shot that you could win right away. We're going to find out who actually is in control in New England. Because if J.J. McCarthy is the pick, then we know Jonathan Kraft has his fingers all over what's going on in New England right now, and that's a bad omen for Patriots fans. If Drake May is the selection, then I think Elliott Wolf had his way, and he's in total control, and they've backed off, and they've allowed him to do his job adequately. We're going to find out a lot about the Patriots situation, I believe, come Thursday night with that third overall selection, if they don't trade out of the pick. Obviously, if they trade out of the pick, all of this is a moot point, and we can go on about our business. But if a selection is made, who that selection is going to go a long way in determining who's in control and where the power structure is, or if there's a power struggle already in the infant stages of this new life after Belichick. I think I have a pretty good inkling of what the power dynamic is right now, and it's not a good look for the Patriots. This is the selection. With the third overall pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the New England Patriots select J.J. McCarthy, quarterback, Michigan. So with that selection, now there's a mad dash to get to 4. Drake May didn't feel like a guy that was going to make it past the top 3 picks. Now he's sitting there at 4. The Vikings have said all along that that was the guy that they really coveted. Now, you know, they were going to go after McCarthy, whomever was left, whatever crumbs were left on the plate. The Vikings were going after it no matter what. But now there's an extra added motivation now that it's Drake May, the guy that worked with your new quarterbacks coach in Josh McCown in high school when he was the high school coach of Drake May. And so there's a relationship there. And if anybody can get the most out of Drake May, if anybody can quote unquote fix Drake May's mechanical issues and get him to play at a high level, if anybody knows what he's capable of doing and how to tap into his psyche, it's going to be Josh McCown. And so the Vikings are now perked up. Their ears are now going off at a very rapid pace because they know this is their opportunity to strike. There are other teams that are interested, but like the Giants, for instance, and Arizona seriously considered the Giants here. But at the end of the day, you can't turn down an opportunity to get 2 first-round picks if you're the Arizona Cardinals. It's just too tempting of an offer to pass up, in addition to a first-rounder next year as well. You just can't pass that up if you're Arizona. The Giants just don't have enough. And so the Cardinals do what a lot of us expected them to do, which is move back from 4 and allow one of these quarterback-needy teams to come up. And that team is the Minnesota Vikings. Incoming! So the Vikings are going to come up, and we all know what they're coming up here for. So Why delay? Let's get straight to the proceedings. With the fourth pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Minnesota Vikings select Drake May, quarterback, UNC. So now you move on to the fifth pick, and the Los Angeles Chargers, who a lot of people thought could get out of this pick prior to Arizona moving out of 4, with the quarterback situation being what it was. If Arizona would have stayed at 4, because we all know how badly they wanted Marvin Harrison Jr., and had they stayed at 4, the Chargers would have been the most likely beneficiary of that, and they would have been the team to been able to get out and pick up these, first round picks. But now that Arizona has moved out, the Chargers have a decision to make. So, out of nowhere, the Arizona Cardinals come roaring back up the draft board from 11 to 6 or 5, with the Chargers. And so we've had a trade. The Arizona Cardinals have traded back up to number 5. So in a move that we've seen the Cardinals pull off before, if you recall last year, the Cardinals traded out of 3 with the Houston Texans, right? Texans drafted C.J. Stroud second, all right? Came back up and drafted Will Anderson Jr. third, right? So the Cardinals moved out of 3, moved back to 12, picked up a bunch of picks, including the 33rd overall selection from the Texans, and a future one of the ones they have this year, right? And they packaged up picks, if you recall, to come back up to number 6 to select Paris Johnson Jr. out of Ohio State. So we've seen their GM play around like this before. And Osborne he's not afraid, right? And here he is again, playing around with the board and having some fun. And last year he said this was a lot of fun. You should have been in the draft room. It was a lot of fun. Well, he's having fun again, right? Moved back from 4 and picked up a first round pick in next year's draft. Now he's doing it again. He did it again, moving back up to number 5. Chargers get what they want, a couple of first rounders or an extra first rounder this year, play around with. And so the Cardinals, they didn't want to give up 23. They wanted to give up 27, which is the pick that they got from Houston in the deal last year in the first round. And the Chargers balked at it. And they said, no, if you want this receiver, if you want Marvin Harrison Jr., you don't want us to take him, then you got to give us what we want. And we want 23. So the Cardinals had to give up 11. They had to give up 23. And in exchange, obviously the teams swap picks 5 and 11. And the Cardinals also receive a third rounder from the Chargers in this year's draft as well. So you know what the business is. You know why the Cardinals came back up. They really wanted to select this player. Now they're going to get their man. And so with the 5th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Arizona Cardinals select Marvin Harrison Jr., wide receiver, Ohio State. So big move for the Cardinals to come up and get their guy. Big move for the Chargers to move back and put themselves in a position to get the guy that they ultimately want, or guys now, as we know they have multiple needs that they need to address in this draft as they kind of turn over that roster a bit. And so now we move on to the 6th pick in the draft, and the Giants were very desperate to get up, especially when Drake May fell to number 4. They didn't have enough draft capital to make it happen, and so they stand pat at number 6. They're probably going to end up getting a quarterback in this year's draft class, but it won't be here at 6. And so you're in a position where you have to take the best player available that also meets a need. And if you're the Giants, it's a no-brainer. You've got nothing at the receiver position that stands out right now. Jalen Hyatt is cool, but you don't have a number 1 receiver on your roster, and you haven't had one since you traded away Odell Beckham Jr. So now's as good a time as any to solve that riddle. So here's the Giants. at number 6. With the 6th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the New York Giants select Malik Nabers, wide receiver, LSU. We go on to number 7, and it's the Tennessee Titans on the clock. And if the number 1 pick with the Bears seemed like a formality with Caleb Williams, this seems like the second highest probable pick in the draft. I don't like to talk in definites because anything can happen on draft night, but this one kind of feels similar to the number 1 overall pick with Caleb Williams. If the Titans are there at 7 and this player is there at 7, which we have no reason to believe that this player won't be there at 7, it just feels like a match made in heaven. And so this one, to me, no brainer. Just turn the card in. With the 7th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Tennessee Titans select Joe Alt, tackle, Notre Dame. So we get to number 8, and it kind of felt like this is where we could see more activity. 8 or 9, somewhere in this general vicinity, with the Bears now starting to talk that wide receiver talk. Felt like 8 with the Falcons could be a hot spot for a team to come up and maybe get their guy, right? The final of these 3 big receivers. And I was hoping that somebody would have some gravitas, right? Somebody would have some cojones. I was hoping that the Bills would man up and go up and get one of these last receivers to come up here and get Rome Odunze, right? I was hoping that Chris Ballard would have the stones to come up here and either get a receiver or get a tight end like Brock Bowers. But I've told you there's a yellow streak down the back of Chris Ballard, the GM of the Indianapolis Colts. You remember the movie Ali G, right? The Ali G movie where they're beefing with the posse from across town. And at the beginning of the movie, they're racing on the public streets, right? But neither one of them are going over the speed limit. He's like, hey, man, watch it. You know, like they're abiding by all the rules, but they're trying to speed, but they're doing like 26 miles an hour or 29 miles an hour because the speed limit is 30. That's Chris Ballard. He stays within the lines. He doesn't color outside the lines. He's not a rule breaker. He doesn't do anything unconventionally. So nobody's coming up. I thought someone would come up here and try to be aggressive, get in front of the Bears, because the Bears have made it publicly known. Look, if you don't come up here, we're going to take one of these receivers. And so the Falcons are like, it's cool. We feel good about our skill guys, so we're going to go in a different direction. We need defense. We haven't been able to get after the quarterback in eons, so hopefully this pick helps change all of that. With the 8th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Atlanta Falcons select Dallas Turner, edge rusher, Alabama. So we get to the 9th selection, and again, it kind of all feels like this is a hot spot. This is piping hot. Someone should be coming up to get Rome Odunze, but the Bears are like, hey, last call. No takers? Going once? Going twice? You think to yourself, why would the Bears draft Rome Odunze? They just traded for Keenan Allen. They already have DJ Moore. Keenan Allen's 32 years old, and he's on the final year of his contract. You're not going to find a better receiver right now that you can plug into this offense that's going to help your star quarterback that you just drafted number 1 overall than Rome Odunze. And if you're the Bears, you can't pass up this opportunity. And I think there's foreshadowing going on. I don't know if you saw Caleb Williams on the same flight with Rome Odunze saying, hey, I'm such a big fan. They took a picture together. That's foreshadowing if I've ever seen it. Like if someone doesn't jump in front of the Bears, they're going to draft Caleb Williams' new best friend, his new BFF, Rome Odunze. And so with the 9th overall pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Chicago Bears select Rome Odunze, wide receiver, Washington. We move on to the 10th pick in the draft, and this is held by the New York Jets. A lot has been made about this pick, and this was a hot spot initially, but I don't think if if no one was willing to come up to 8 or 9, then I don't see anybody trading up to 10. I don't think there's a dire need right now because that was the last one I felt like at receiver, and I thought someone would come up. If you want Brock Bowers, you had an opportunity. Maybe the Jets are listening, but they're all in. And if you're all in, you shouldn't be trading back. You shouldn't be taking guys that are going to help you 2-3 years down the road. You address the offensive line, so you don't need an offensive lineman right now. If you're truly all in on Aaron Rodgers, then you should be getting everything he needs to help win. And that's exactly what the Jets plan to do here at number 10 overall. With the 10th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the New York Jets select Brock Bowers, tight end, Georgia. So now we go to the 11th pick in the draft, and things get really interesting as we start to get into the double digits, right? So obviously the Chargers traded back from 5 here with the Arizona Cardinals, who traded back from 4 with Minnesota, and so a lot of activity with this particular pick here, but the Chargers aren't moving again this time. They're going to make a selection. We know what Jim Harbaugh wants to do. He wants to run the football. He's already went shopping at the Baltimore Ravens store, right? He's already picked up a few items from there, J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, and he's not done shopping at the Baltimore Ravens store. As a matter of fact, every year, okay, the Ravens seem to collect Alabama players. He wants to run the football. You're not going to find a better road grading, destructive run blocking tackle in the draft than this behemoth here. With the 11th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Los Angeles Chargers select J.C. Latham, tackle, Alabama. So now we move on to the 12th pick in the draft, and the Denver Broncos, who feverishly tried to move up to get their hands on one of the quarterbacks. They were very smitten by J.J. McCarthy. They also were interested in Drake May, but McCarthy was the guy that they were after, and they thought he'd fall to 4, and he didn't. But either way, they just didn't have enough capital. They don't have a second-round pick, and so they've been doing a lot of things that we would term frivolous over the last few years, like trading for Sean Payton, and so they found themselves in a pretty rough spot. So we heard we've got to trade, and up comes the Philadelphia Eagles. And we've heard throughout the end of this process that the Eagles were making phone calls, trying to get up. What could the Eagles want? Why would they want to move up in the draft? Anytime Howie Roseman rings your line, you probably shouldn't answer because you're about to get fleeced. Well, there's no fleecing going on here. And this is a simple equation. Denver Broncos don't have a second round pick. The Eagles have 2. Now the Broncos have 1, right? And you didn't love the value of what was sitting here at 12 in terms of quarterback. Now you move back and you're right in the wheelhouse of where you feel comfortable selecting that guy. So everything makes sense for Denver. Meanwhile, the Eagles have come all the way up from 22 to get what exactly? Last year, they were awful defending the pass. Specifically in the secondary, it was a mess. It was an abject disaster. They were old in the secondary, and it showed. They don't want leftovers. They don't want to pick from whatever's left of the cornerback market. Instead, they're going to be aggressive because they know this is around the time of the draft where the cornerback position is going to start to be poked and prodded at. They're going to go up and get what they deem to be the best corner in this year's draft class. They're not effing around. But this is what Howie does this time of the year. With the 12th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Philadelphia Eagles select Quinyon Mitchell, cornerback, Toledo. So now we go to the 13th selection, and it's the Las Vegas Raiders. And look, a lot has been made about this pick. Raiders desperately wanted to get up to get their hands on Antonio Pierce's guy, which was Jaden Daniels. They had a relationship going all the way back to Jaden Daniels' Arizona State days. So that was their guy. Clearly, they're not going to be able to move up to get him. So now you got to go to plan B. And As much as they would like to bypass quarterback here, you're just not sure what's going to happen behind you. You just watched Denver trade back into a much more comfortable spot. Are they going to take your guy? Seattle's sitting right there at 16, and they just hired the Washington offensive coordinator to be their offensive coordinator. Do you really want to play around with that? Are you sure that Seattle's not going to take a quarterback here at 16? You're not sure about them. You're not sure about what Denver's up to. All you know is if I bypass quarterback here, I may not get another shot. Are you in a position to do that? Do you love the other options? Do you love Spencer Ryder? Or do you love Spencer Rattler? Do you love Bo Nix? Do you love the other options? Because it doesn't feel like you love the other options. And if you don't, then you know what you have to do. It's painful, I know, but you do what must be done. With the 13th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, Las Vegas Raiders select Michael Penix Jr., quarterback, Washington. So we've seen 5 quarterbacks go off the board in the first 13 picks. We're not done yet, but as we move on to the 14th pick in the draft, the New Orleans Saints sit on the clock, and we just saw one of the corners go off the board not too long ago, and so teams are starting to get a little antsy. Speaking of antsy teams, we've got a trade, and the Jacksonville Jaguars have come up from 17 to 14 for, we already know what it is. They desperately need cornerback help. They look at 15, they see who's sitting behind New Orleans, and they understand that the Colts also desperately need cornerback help. And in a division that all of a sudden has all of these dynamic receivers, you probably need to shore up the secondary if you're Jacksonville, if you're Indianapolis. And Jacksonville's not going to sit around and wait. They're going to go and be aggressive and get who they deem to be the next best corner in this draft, maybe the best corner in their mind's eye in this draft. Whatever the case may be, they had to leapfrog a divisional foe, and that's exactly what they did to go get their man at the cornerback position. With the 14th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Terrion Arnold, cornerback, Alabama. So now you move on to the 15th pick with the Indianapolis Colts, and they're kind of left twiddling their thumbs a bit. They kind of knew something like this could happen, but they were so close to getting their hands on Terrion Arnold, and so they're a bit disappointed. They were hoping that Quinyon Mitchell or Arnold would fall into their lap, but they didn't. So now they've got to kind of pivot and go in a different direction. And you know what? This pick kind of fits what Chris Ballard has done over the life of his career as a general manager. Guy with some height, weight, speed, a guy that kind of fits in a different number of different pockets. He's versatile, can play every single position in the secondary, kind of fits what the Colts have been all about. And he also gives you some special teams value if you want to utilize that as well. So this kind of feels like a good pick. A little bit earlier maybe than some may have thought, but he had an excellent pro day. He's got ball production, and I think it makes sense after seeing Quinyon Mitchell and Terrion Arnold both come off the board. With the 15th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Indianapolis Colts select Cooper DeJean, defensive back, Iowa. So we move on to the 16th pick in the draft, and it's the Seattle Seahawks. And they're kind of in no man's land. When you're right here smack dab in the middle of the draft, you're kind of in no man's land. And so you just want to do something that makes sense. And they could trade out of this pick. In past years, that's probably what they would have done. But as we sit here now, they could use an infusion of talent along the offensive line. And again, they may not be done at the quarterback position. They did trade for Sam Howell this offseason, so we'll see what happens. But when it's all said and done, this is a team that has just hired Washington's offensive coordinator. Who better to know what offensive players to pluck from that Washington offense than their former offensive coordinator? And so this kind of feels like a no-brainer here at 16 if this player is available. And he is, so he's the pick. With the 16th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Seattle Seahawks select Troy Fautanu, offensive lineman, Washington. He can play multiple positions. He may start out inside on the interior. You did lose one of your guards this offseason in free agency to the Carolina Panthers. And so he can come in and play guard initially, but he may ultimately carve out a niche for himself as a tackle because I think he's capable of playing the tackle position in this league. But we'll see. But he can play multiple positions, and he's going to fit right in on that offensive line of the Seattle Seahawks. You go to the 17th pick. Obviously, the New Orleans Saints traded back from 14 with Jacksonville, so now the Saints are on the clock, and they too need massive offensive line help at the tackle position in particular. The reason they were comfortable trading back from 14 is because they looked up at the board and they saw both Troy Fautanu and this next player both available, and they said the likelihood is one of those two guys is going to be available if we move back 3 spots. So they weren't really worried about missing out on a top tier talent. They felt really good about either one of those two guys, and there are other tackles that they also feel good about. And so they felt great about moving back just 3 spots. They felt like they were still going to get tremendous value, and they were going to pick up a 2024 fourth round pick in the process. So why not, right? If you're the New Orleans Saints. And they still get their guy. So it all worked out in the end. With the 17th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the New Orleans Saints select Talisa Fuaga, offensive tackle, Oregon State. So now we move on to the 18th pick in the draft. It's the Cincinnati Bengals, and a lot has been made of their situation at receiver with T. Higgins. A lot has been made of their offensive line. They've addressed some of that already. But they could still go offensive line at 18. But I think it is more important for them to replace and replenish what has been lost this offseason. You've lost Tyler Boyd already. You're going to lose T. Higgins eventually here. Whether you trade him or not doesn't seem likely at this point, but he's only here for 1 more year. So you need to start that process now. If you want to continue to be a contender, you can't sit on your hands and wait. I know it's a deep wide receiver draft class, but you have a chance to get a guy that can come in and immediately impact this football team. And I don't see the Cincinnati Bengals, who I think are one of the better drafting teams in the league anyway, see them passing up this opportunity. And thus, at 18, here's what they decide to do. With the 18th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Cincinnati Bengals select Brian Thomas Jr., wide receiver, LSU. So we move on to the 19th pick in the draft, and it's the Los Angeles Rams. And the Rams have a first-round pick for the first time in the Sean McVay era. Let that sink in. McVay has been with the Rams since 2017, and they've never had a first-round pick. From 17 all the way to 22, they never, or 23, excuse me, never had a first round pick. So McVay has always been one to be thinking about here and now, not thinking about the future. And so it's hard for me to believe that they're going to select a tackle or select a guy that can help them in the future. Nah, that's not how Sean McVay operates. That's not how Les Snead operates. And Trader Les, I could see him trading back. I could see him trading up. Nothing surprises me with Trader Les. That's why they haven't had a first-round pick in the last 6 drafts or so. But with that said, you lose Aaron Donald to retirement this offseason. There's no replacing a guy like Aaron Donald. Kobe Turner had an excellent rookie campaign, but that doesn't stop you from trying to replace Aaron Donald. And this is the closest you're going to get here at 19. With the 19th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Los Angeles Rams select Byron Murphy II, defensive lineman, Texas. So we get to the 20th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, and it's the Pittsburgh Steelers on the clock. And, you know, they were really mulling over a decision whether they were going to go with JPJ, Jackson Powers Johnson at center, or Graham Barton. Like, that's what they were really deciding between. And then they look up and they see all of these tackle prospects, including a massive man, mountain of a man, sitting there, and they're saying, what is this guy doing here? They don't know, but they're not going to delay. They're just going to turn the card in right away. With the 20th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Pittsburgh Steelers select Amarius Mims, offensive tackle, Georgia. The prevailing thought was Broderick Jones was going to be kicked over to left tackle. That was always the plan when they drafted him last year, was to play him at right tackle and eventually ease him over to left tackle. That opportunity has now presented itself. They're going to move him over to left tackle, and now they're going to give him his old running mate, his old buddy from the University of Georgia, Amarius Mims, to give them bookend tackles from the University of Georgia. So you go to the 21st pick now in the draft, and it's the Miami Dolphins who are now on the clock, and they've had so many injuries at edge rusher. You know, you saw Jalen Phillips, who was in the midst of a career year, go down last year with an Achilles injury. They lose Bradley Chubb in the, I think it was the last game, second to last game of the season, in the fourth quarter when they were getting blown out against the Baltimore Ravens. I think that was the second to last game of the season to an ACL, which is so disappointing there. And so you find yourself in this conundrum. Not to mention you released Emmanuel Ogbah due to cap, situations and restrictions that you just had to get under the cap. And then you lose Andrew Van Ginkel in free agency. So your edge rushing position right now, pretty desolate. Yeah, you went out and you signed Shaq Barrett. That's cool, but he's on the back end of his career. You got to get some youth in there. And you don't even know if those guys that got injured last year are going to be ready for the start of the season. No worries. This guy just fell in your lap. Arguably the best edge rusher in this year's draft class is sitting right there for you to take. You can't pass up this opportunity if you're the Dolphins. With the 21st pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Miami Dolphins select Jarrett Verse, edge rusher, Florida State. So now you get to the 22nd pick in the draft. The Denver Broncos traded back from number 13 to this selection, or 12, from this selection, allowed the Philadelphia Eagles to trade up to get Quinyon Mitchell, the corner, out of Toledo. And so all of a sudden now, the Broncos find themselves in a very advantageous position. They picked up a second-round pick, which they had none previous to that trade. And then they find themselves in the perfect spot for them to select this guy who they wanted all along, but they weren't comfortable spending the 12th overall pick. It's the best of both worlds. Best of both worlds. With the 22nd pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Denver Broncos select Bo Nix, quarterback, Oregon. So now we're talking about the 23rd pick, and this pick is this is like a pick that nobody seems to have wanted over the last couple of years. This pick has been in more circulation than the dollar before credit cards were invented. I mean, this pick started out with Houston. They traded it to Cleveland. Cleveland then traded it to Arizona, right? I think that's what happened. Or Minnesota, right? Cleveland then traded it to Minnesota. Minnesota then traded it to Arizona. Arizona then traded it to the Los Angeles Chargers. And now the Chargers sit here with an opportunity to double dip in the first round. And all of a sudden, the phone rings, and it's the Washington Commanders, who see an opportunity to pounce on one of the last remaining tackles that are, to me, worthy of trading up for in the first round. And this guy is kind of fallen in this year's draft class. He started out as one of the more highly regarded tackles, and over time, as people started to watch the tape, people have soured on him a bit, right? But it doesn't change the fact that this guy's talented, and he didn't give up a sack in his collegiate career. And so you say what you want, but there's talent here. And yeah, there's some things that need to be cleaned up. But at the end of the day, the Chargers couldn't pass up an opportunity to move back into the second round, pick up a second and an additional third round pick. So they're at 36 now, and they're getting the 67th pick. So they're feeling really good about what they just were able to do. So they've turned around and they flipped that trade from earlier and picked up even more picks. So it turns out to be the gift that just keeps on giving if you're the Los Angeles Chargers. But for the Commanders, you just drafted a quarterback number 2 overall, and now you're going to protect him by drafting him, his future starting left tackle. With the 23rd pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Washington Commanders select Olu Fashanu, offensive tackle, Penn State. So now we get to the 24th pick in the draft, and it belongs to the Dallas Cowboys, who are very disappointed because although they needed a center, right, they saw Olu Fashanu and they were going to pounce. They were going to draft him, and Washington, obviously a family member, jumps right in front of them and snags the guy that they were getting excited that was falling into their lap. But no worries. The Cowboys have always been a team that has been very, very cognizant of the offensive line and not afraid to spin, whether it's at tackle or on the interior in the first round. They've always kept their offensive line intact, and that is not going to change. If you're all in, as Jerry Jones has said all season, if you're all in, then that means you have to protect Dak Prescott. Under no circumstances do you go into the season with question marks up front. That's not the Cowboy way anyway. And so they continue on with tradition. With the 24th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Dallas Cowboys select Graham Barton, offensive lineman, Duke. It's rare to find a 5-tool gem in the NFL Draft, an actual offensive lineman that can play all 5 positions. But that is Graham Barton. And the thing that has saved the Dallas Cowboys over the years, especially the last year or two, was flexibility up front. And Graham Barton offers them flexibility. When guys got injured a few years ago, Zach Martin had to go play guard and tackle, and he had to move all over, right? Trey Smith has been exceptional for them in moving around, guard to tackle, guard to tackle. Graham Barton also gives them that ability to move around in a pinch, and so that's why he's the selection. You go to 25 overall. The 25th pick belongs to the Green Bay Packers, and the Packers are right now in a position where they feel like they've got a chance to do something big, and capitalizing off of the success that you had last year, kind of unexpectedly, I might add, almost upsetting the San Francisco 49ers en route to the NFC Championship game. You just got a few pieces that you have to kind of figure out. And you could go tackle here, but they've developed tackle so well, I don't even think that's a primary need. Sure, you could add a guy at some point, but I think a more pressing need right now is at cornerback. Do you really trust, what you have behind Jair Alexander? Hell, do you even trust that Jair Alexander is that guy anymore? He used to be him. I'm not sure that he is that guy anymore. Whatever the case may be, you need to add more youth to that secondary. You already added Xavier McKinney, which was an excellent get in free agency. Add another piece to the puzzle in that secondary and give yourself a chance to really be dynamic on the back end. With the 25th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers select Nate Wiggins, cornerback, Clemson. So we get to the 26th pick in the draft, and it belongs to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And what a surprise last year was for the Buccaneers. Baker Mayfield had a resurgence in his career, and so they feel good about what they've done there. They were able to keep Mike Evans in Tampa Bay, so they feel good about that. This is a team that is very interesting because they have a lot of weaponry on offense, but do they have enough defensively? I still don't think they're where they need to be. And with Todd Bowles being your head coach, it just feels like they're not good enough defensively. And one of the reasons they're not very good defensively is they just don't get after the quarterback well enough. And so I think this pick was a pleasant surprise for the Buccaneers. Didn't expect this guy to be here. And we'll explain a little bit more on the other side. With the 26th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers select LouieTeeNetwork, edge rusher, UCLA. To me, this is the best edge rusher, pure pass rusher, the guy with the best skills, to get to the quarterback in this year's draft class. And the only reason he fell to 26 is because teams had concerns about the neck issue that he had that caused him to miss an entire season and retire for a brief period there before coming back and tearing it up at UCLA. But there were concerns. Some teams took him off their board, but Tampa Bay looked at the two guys that they were comparing. And they looked at Chop Robinson and they looked at LouieTeeNetwork, and they said, we already went down the raw, athletically gifted, profile road before with Joe Tryon Shoyinka, and it hasn't worked out. So now let's go for the skilled rusher, the guy that we know can get to the quarterback. And that's why they selected LouieTeeNetwork. I think it's a great selection, and we'll see if now he can jumpstart that Buccaneers defense. You get to 27, and speaking of Chop Robinson and an edge rusher, the Arizona Cardinals are saying, thank you. With the 27th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Arizona Cardinals select Chop Robinson, edge rusher, Penn State. This was a no-brainer for Arizona. Chop Robinson was a guy that they coveted all along, and they're shocked that he was here. And to be able to get him at 27 was fantastic for them. They need some juice in their pass rush, and Chop Robinson is one of those guys, along with Dallas Turner, that can infuse juice immediately into your pass rush. If you're the Arizona Cardinals, you're feeling great about this selection. The Buffalo Bills are now on the clock at 28 overall, and the Bills traded away a talented number one wide receiver earlier this year. And so there are questions about what they're going to be able to do, right? Stephon Diggs was such a huge part of their ascension in the AFC and in the AFC East. But as the Chiefs showed last year, you can survive. There's life after a number one wide receiver, but the Bills are not the Chiefs. And so I'm a little disappointed that Brandon Beane didn't get aggressive. He talked about in Carolina once upon a time when they would trade up and they would have to give up a future first round pick. It never truly worked out for them, and they would feel pretty bad about it afterwards. This isn't that. You had a chance to get an elite receiver and you passed up that opportunity. I'm a bit disappointed in Brandon Beane, to be honest with you. So here's your consolation prize. I don't love it, but kind of saw this one coming if you didn't trade up. With the 28th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Buffalo Bills select Adonai Mitchell, wide receiver, Texas. So now we move on to the 29th pick in the draft, and that belongs to the Detroit Lions. And really, the Lions don't have any holes in their roster, and they could really do whatever they want to do. They could do whatever they like, at this pick. And usually the Lions stick with tough guys, gritty guys that define that grit and toughness that has come to become the mantra of the Detroit Lions. And so I was this close to giving them Zach Frazier, interior offensive lineman out of West Virginia, because he's a former wrestler. He's a gritty, football player. He's nasty. He's physical. He fits the DNA profile of a Detroit Lion. And I wouldn't be shocked if that's the pick here, having lost offensive lineman already in free agency. However, they had Cam Sutton, get arrested this offseason. They cut him after a domestic violence incident. And I just think corner was already an issue to begin with. Now, no Cam Sutton, you got to do something. And this is not the best cornerback draft to begin with. You can't wait here if you're the Lions. You got to do something now. And that's exactly why I think they go against the grain of what they normally do, which is draft what they want. And the guy that fits their program, they go for a guy that's going to give them immediate relief right now at a position of need. With the 29th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Kool-Aid McKinstry, cornerback, Alabama. So now we get to the 30th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, and the Baltimore Ravens are on the clock. And the Ravens are another one of these teams that don't have a ton of glaring needs, but they do have two in particular: offensive line and wide receiver. It's amazing because last year they were loaded at receiver, and now after no longer having Odell Beckham Jr. and, kind of moving away from some of the other guys like Devin Duvernay, all of a sudden now they need receiver help, right? And so this is a great spot to do it, but this is a deep draft class. You can get receiver help, right? You can wait a little bit. What you can't wait on is tackle. You moved on from Morgan Moses, and so sure, you could promote Daniel Falele and you could have competition amongst the group. That's fine, but why? Why do that, right? Why not draft a tackle that can come in and help you right away? And also remember that you've dealt with injuries at left tackle with Ronnie Stanley for the last, feels like 2-3 years, right? So why not get a tackle just to keep you from having to worry about all of that stuff, right? I think this is a great spot. This is a guy that's going to fit, what you want to do. And I think this is a good spot for him here. With the 30th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Baltimore Ravens select Tyler Guyton, offensive tackle, Oklahoma. So now we're at the 31st pick in the draft, and San Francisco 49ers are on the clock, and this team was so close to hoisting the Lombardi and finally getting it done with the group of Lynch and Shanahan, but it just didn't happen. But this is a team that is in a great position now. Brandon Ayuk, contract dispute. Don't know what's going to happen there. Could take a receiver right here. Could take a receiver at some point in this draft. I still think that it's more likely that they take a receiver at some point, trade Brandon Ayuk to the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's what I foresee happening. And I was close to making something happen here, but I just don't see that happening. I don't see that being forced at this current juncture. Maybe after they get their hands on a receiver that they truly like, maybe they do that, but right now it doesn't seem that likely. So and I don't think the Steelers are giving up a first round pick for Brandon Ayuk either. So that also is the issue with that situation. But at the same time, John Lynch said, look, we don't have a lot of pressing needs on this roster, but we do have some decisions to make a year or two out. One of those decisions is defensive line. And are you willing to pay Javon Hargrave $25 million next year when that contract balloons? And the production that he got, and I think he'll be, 32 years old or something like that at that point, and the production that you've gotten since that first year hasn't been great. I don't think you're going to be willing to pay him that kind of money. So why not get one of the most explosive defensive tackles in this year's draft class who's sitting here waiting for you? And look, you didn't get a lot of pressure on the quarterback down the stretch of the season. This guy's going to help with that. So I think this is the pick for the San Francisco 49ers. With the 31st pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the San Francisco 49ers select Johnny Newton, defensive tackle, Illinois. So now we get to the final pick in the first round of the 2024 NFL Draft. Obviously, the Kansas City Chiefs, your Super Bowl defending champions, are on the clock, and they've had quite an offseason, to say the least. The receiver position was not what they had hoped. They moved on from Valdez Scantling. You had Rashid Rice get into some trouble. It just feels natural that they're going to select a receiver. But also, they traded L'Jarius Sneed to the Tennessee Titans. And there's no bigger hole on that roster currently than cornerback. Yeah, they got some young guys, but L'Jarius Sneed was such a huge part of what they did defensively. So, because he was such a big part of what they did defensively, we got a trade. And the Kansas City Chiefs make a trade with the New Orleans Saints to acquire cornerback Marshawn Lattimore in this deal. So the Chiefs get their replacement for L'Jarius Sneed and an all-pro, Pro Bowl caliber corner who has dealt with some injuries, but when he is healthy and locked in, you won't find many better. And the Saints unload some cap space and get some relief there. And they also are able to get some much needed help on the defensive front. They need to get after the quarterback better. And Cam Jordan is hanging on by a thread. You need to be able to get to the quarterback. And this guy here is exactly what the doctor ordered for the New Orleans Saints. So with the 32nd pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the New Orleans Saints select Darius Robinson, defensive lineman, Mizzou. And that concludes the first round and the 2024 LouieTeeNetwork Mock Draft. Here is the recap of what took place. Picks 1 through 16 you see on the screen. We had a total of 5 trades in the first round of this draft, including Marshawn Lattimore being traded to the Kansas City Chiefs. We had 6 quarterbacks go in the first round, 5 going in the first 13 selections. So really interesting dynamic there with the picks, as you see 17 through 32, with the Saints having the bookend picks from 17 to 32. New Orleans traded back once, and then they traded up once, did the Saints. So Saints getting busy revamping their offensive and defensive lines, getting better in the trenches. So that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. Thumbs up the mock draft. Tell me what you think. Leave it down in the comment section. We're one day away from the actual draft. I think I'm going to get a bunch of these right, but we'll see. You guys have a good one. Take care.